Hello, everyone, and hi, Max. How's it going?
Hey Joe, good to be back with you.
I know we have not seen each other in so long, all the way from yesterday.
It's always a
Have you
pleasure.
been Have you been busy in the last 24 hours?
Nothing eventful has happened since yesterday, so yeah, no, just same old.
Cool, 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 cool. So, I think it's time to introduce our next guest, and in a suitable fashion, he doesn't really need an introduction, but I will still go through the entire thing because there is a lot to be said about this man. He has been busy. So he's been doing M&A advisory for KPMG. He has been serving Fortune 1000 companies. He has been the head of third-party marketplace for consumer electronics at Amazon. And now he is a eight-figure Amazon seller. He's the chief commercial officer at Collar Lines, where he provides full service Amazon channel management. And he is also running one of the most interesting and informative newsletters for Amazon sellers, the best at Amazon newsletter. So without further ado, can we get in Jon Derkits?
Welcome.
Hi, Jon.
How's
Nice
it
to
going,
have you
John?
here.
Good to see you guys. I gotta say, I think this conversation has been 6 months in the making. You know, Max and Joe, I think we talked about it back in the summer. I was super busy. You guys were busy. I know there was some traveling involved. Max, you and I see each other at so many events, but it's literally like flash in the pan,
Yeah,
2 to 5 minutes max of talking to one another. And Joe, you and I met for the first time at Accelerate, which was lovely, but it was literally, you know,
Hi,
a
bye.
high buy, and it was far too short. So I'm glad we get to spend an hour or so here together today and just chat live. I mean, we obviously trade messages asynchronously, and that's fun. But there's something to be said about just sitting across from someone and letting the conversation wander.
absolutely.
100%.
And I think,
100%.
as Joe was saying, your newsletter, no offense, Joe, is probably the best in the business. Super informative. Probably one of the biggest, Twitter influences as well, I'd say. So I'm on X. I deleted all my social media, but I still check it, Twitter and LinkedIn for business purposes, and you've always got some fun memes going on. So yeah, great.
Yeah, I got to say, it took a while to find my Twitter voice. I think if you look at my account, I joined Twitter maybe in 2009 or 2013, thereabouts. And I was quiet for a long time. And then I was even quieter when I joined Amazon, because Max, you know this from working there.
Yeah.
Amazon, let's just say they sort of control the narrative that goes out there publicly, particularly about the company. And so I was always super nervous to tweet anything Amazon or e-commerce related while I was there. And then when I left in 2019, I didn't really embrace Twitter right away. It wasn't probably until about 2 years ago that I started to look at it as a supplemental social media platform to LinkedIn, which, I think you guys know I'm very active there. But what I found was the Twitter audience didn't particularly respond to the same types of content that I push out on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I'm understandably very professional. A lot of thoughtful content goes out there that, frankly, I put a lot of time into. I tried to replicate that on Twitter or just cross post, and I got probably like 2 likes, which, Max, I'm sure you were one of them, and then the other one was probably.
I thought you were going to say Max like you.
No.
Like you, Max.
But I mean, I still use Twitter for occasional Amazon education pieces, but it's mostly my outlet for kind of quick, off the cuff Amazon thoughts. Memes is just one of the creative ways that I get to express myself on Twitter. So yeah, it's fun. And what I'll say to people who have maybe turned away from Twitter or X over the years because it's toxic or for whatever reason, I went through the same kind of relationship with Twitter, and it wasn't until I sort of curated my feed and my followers that it became a much more hospitable place, a much better place for mental health. And now, I avoid kind of accounts that are strictly politics or clickbaity. My ecosystem on Twitter is really focused on people that are in the small and medium business world, fellow entrepreneurs, fellow Amazon folks, e-commerce folks, folks like yourself, back when you were on there. But yeah, it can be really.
I'm still on there. I just don't. I don't scroll.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Mine's curated, like lots of AI, lots of people who like, we're talking about Perplexity on the last podcast. Like, I'm on the world of people who love like Perplexity and the humanoid robots and all this stuff. So I agree. It's a cool space if you can curate, if you can take charge of your algorithm. And I wish, side note, you could take more charge of your algorithm and you could be like, stop showing me this. But
No, I do that too. I report things that I don't want to see. It was my primary source for really staying at the cutting edge of AI in kind of the early 2023 or late 2022 when ChatGPT was rolled out and Midjourney started to emerge. Honestly, until Joe released her newsletter, and now I exclusively use that to stay ahead of the curve. Twitter was an amazing source because you had so many people who would go deep and demonstrate, prompt engineering or, show kind of what you could do with the never-ending wave of tools that are released.
Nice. And John, actually, I want to, kind of proceed with this because I really want to dive a little bit deeper in your newsletter because it's so well known and so well respected in the industry. And as someone who is always staying in the edge of like what is happening in terms of the Amazon ecosystem, like how, like basically reporting on this and reporting on the latest news and hacks and tricks and strategies, like what do you feel has changed profoundly in the last few years for Amazon sellers that is kind of making everything different for them and in terms of their selling experience?
For people who have been selling for a long time, 5 years, 10 years, really anyone who jumped into Amazon in the 20 teens, I think many of them were just beneficiaries of great timing. The Amazon marketplace was less sophisticated, less costly, less complex to navigate, and less competitive at that time, which meant as an Amazon seller, you could be good at maybe one thing and have a very successful business. And not just a successful business from a top line perspective, but one that actually took the money that you made and put it in your bank account. And moreover, those folks that started businesses in the 20 teens probably had an exit during the aggregator heyday. So different world 5, 7, 10 years ago on Amazon. Over the past, let's call it 4 years, I think one of the market shifts from an Amazon operator perspective is you can't just be good at one thing. You need to be good at basically 20 things, inclusive of sourcing, marketing, finance, forecasting and inventory management, creative. I mean, the list goes on. And I think what that means in terms of implications for Amazon sellers or aspiring Amazon sellers is you need a good supporting cast. The solopreneur path is harder than it's ever been. And so that supporting cast doesn't necessarily have to be people, though. And that's what's kind of so exciting about really the past 18 months as AI tools have evolved. Your supporting cast can be inclusive of people, but it should be inclusive of tools that provide leverage in what you do, tools that enable you to be, maybe a C student in one domain, but put out A+ work, right? And, I'm staring at one of those tools in the face right now. Sorry, I didn't want to, that came off very wrong. I'm not calling you a tool, Max. What I was trying to say, I'm staring at e-content. And Max, I feel like I was kind of involved in the e-content journey from the early days as you've been building it. And, immediately when we first started talking, a light bulb went off in my head because, one of the domains that I don't have as a seller is design. I can concept things, but when it comes to execution, that's where I always had to hire designers. And with tools like e-content, I can bridge that gap. Or solopreneur can bridge that gap in a meaningful way. And that's what's really exciting about kind of where we are. I mean, harder than ever, costlier than ever, but at the same time, the ability to recruit a supporting cast of tools and people is perhaps easier than it's ever been, because there's not only just great tools, but a ton of Amazon talent out there.
So
I just wanna like do a caveat here, a full disclosure. We have not paid Jon Derkits to
No.
keep saying nice things about us. We have not done that before the show, but thank you very much. We'll pay you after the show, Jon.
I will accept.
So in this supporting cast of tools, Jon, obviously you've mentioned the best one, but ignoring your content, what are the other kind of key tools that you're using, or I guess what you're using is probably the best question.
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that quickly, and then I want to also kind of go down the path of the tools that Amazon released. Over the past 6 months, announced that Accelerate, announced that Unboxed. What excites me about Amazon tools is that they are free, and that they are trained on, frankly, data that many SaaS platforms wouldn't have access to.
Yeah.
And I think that poses potential. We can get into that, and I want to get your takes on those as well. But I think if I think about my tool stack, it's interesting. I've posted this meme on more than one occasion. It's the sort of the bell curve meme, right? Where it shows, low intelligence people starting somewhere, and then the top of the curve is, the very complex stuff, and then the high intelligence people just ultimately end up back at the the low intelligence tool.
Yeah.
And I've created my own riff on that with Amazon tools, and the two ends of the curve are Keepa. And Keepa, I'm sure you both know, has been around for, probably 15 years at this point. And anyone who looks at it might think, super basic. It's just attribute data across, all the listings on Amazon. And for a long time, that's how I regarded it. What has been the unlock for me was, 2023, ChatGPT rolled out, and in maybe subsequent rollouts, it introduced the ability to kind of become a developer. And so what that did for me in parallel with Keepa was I now tap into the Keepa API and pull that data into Google Sheets in ways that I couldn't do before, because I'm not a developer. I can tweak code, I can apply code, I can figure things out, but the ability to write code from scratch was 100% created for me by ChatGPT. And because of that, I could leverage Keepa in a way that I never have before. So I think Keepa has become just a crucial tool in my stack.
Can I ask before you move on? So what are you pulling in the API? What are you looking at?
Yeah. So I use it for competitive intelligence. I'm tracking price changes across my key competitors. I'm not trying to boil the ocean, but I want real-time insights into when they're running sales so that I can match. My biggest brand is in a very price competitive space, so that's crucial. I monitor my own listings. My team has, I used to have a team. Now I have an agency, and my agency runs my brand. But my agency team, they are monitoring changes to my listings on a daily basis. And so we have a process that I call walk the store. And it involves literally people looking at key hero ASINs from a customer-facing perspective on a day-to-day basis, but also scrubbing alerts that come up through Keepa. So we've been able to basically engineer a lot of other third-party tools out of our stack by just being very sophisticated in using the Keepa API.
That's amazing. And what other tools? Actually, this is really interesting because Keepa is not an AI tool, but you have integrated AI to make it into an AI enabled tool. So what have you done? Any sort of programming with any other tools like that?
Sadly, no. And I think it's not out of lack of desire. It's out of the fact that many tools just don't go to market with API endpoints. And I'll call one out unless something's changed, but Helium 10, right? I think I was interested in API connections to Helium 10 a year ago, 18 months ago. As I was doing this with Keepa, I'm like, well, I'd love to get some Helium 10 data and pull it in. And it wasn't possible. Jungle Scout, of course, has this. This isn't an endorsement of them or Helium 10. It's just to say, I don't think many tools are built with API connections in mind. And I think when you build a large business on Amazon or you run an agency, what becomes very acute in how you're operating is you want data to come to you, right? You want to consume data in the place where it's most convenient. The analog is, in the consumer product world, in the Amazon world, is meeting customers where they are. You don't just be an Amazon business, you become an omni-channel brand and you meet customers where they are. I think it's the same kind of thing for consumers of software, of data. I don't want to log into 10 different dashboards on a daily basis. I don't want my team doing that. I want the data from those sources pulled into a single dashboard where my team can spend their time. So, Joe, to your question, the answer is really none other than keep up. And it's not out of lack of desire. I can tell you that, and Max knows this, anytime I'm talking to a software vendor, one of the early questions I ask is, do you have an API? Or is that on your roadmap? Because that informs how I think about it.
Can I actually just ask you a follow-up question? Because this is something that I've been pondering a lot. Obviously, Amazon is changing significantly with Rufus, and just generally the entire customer behavior is changing with the sort of integration of AI in our shopping patterns. Like, how do you see a lot of these, and this is not just limited to obviously the Amazon kind of bubble, but a lot of optimization tools are focused on keywords. Like, how do you see these tools? Do you see them developing themselves in some way to take consideration of this new pattern? And what do you see is the future for these kind of tools?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to. And let's back up for a second to just be really precise about this topic. So you guys, I think, have Max, you wrote some great articles on this. There's a concept of sort of lexical SEO and then semantic SEO, right? And the old world was lexical SEO, right? It was just pure keyword matching, right? Semantic SEO is the world that we're moving into, where it's about kind of customer intent and drawing inferences from phrases. It's not strictly matching. And we're moving into this semantic SEO world. Rufus is kind of the gateway dog into that. But I think what that means for tools that have been built up around helping sellers optimize their SEO on Amazon is they need to retool. They need to be able to live in that semantic SEO world as well. And I think what will be super interesting is how quickly or how well some of these tools can tap into the information that Amazon is giving us about SEO directly through Rufus. I just gave a presentation, I just recorded a presentation that'll be at the OrangeClick Virtual Summit later this month. But I talked about how top 1% sellers are already kind of harvesting customer intent and meaningful features that customers prioritize their buying around through Rufus. And, it's a very manual process right now, or at least that's kind of how the only way I've been able to skin it. But I think a tool that can sort of programmatically scrape or ingest Rufus outputs that are tied to, customer behavior and search relevance for a product will have a significant edge, because that is the way SEO is going. I don't think there's anything that's disputing that. I'm not smart enough to do this, but it's just super fascinating to me. And actually, there was this will go in my newsletter tomorrow. I flagged it this morning, and I was super excited. But I stumbled across someone who invented or launched a Chrome extension that pulls in programmatically some of the Rufus recommendations. I think that has significant implications for SEO. I need to figure out how to adapt it to my business. I already have the smartest people at my agency looking at it. But yeah, we're on the cusp of a very new world. And I think the sellers, the brands that don't adapt to that think strictly in lexical SEO terms, I mean, they're gonna not get left behind, but they're gonna find themselves on page 2 before they know it.
I am definitely opening your newsletter tomorrow. I can't wait to find out the tool. I think Max is already Googling it.
Well, I don't want to say too much here about what we're thinking, but in your perspective, Jon, how are sellers? What are sellers looking for in Rufus, and what are they implementing? Like this top 1% of sellers in your network.
Yeah. So in myself and then people that I've spoken with in Rufus, they're first kind of scanning a product category, a subcategory, and asking Rufus, what are the 5 common customer pain points in searching for this product? What are the features that customers are looking for? And then they're basically taking that output from Rufus, and if they're further early along in their kind of product development cycle, they're using it to inform product development. Or if they've already launched a product, it's about building that Rufus content, sometimes word for word, into the listing. I know I said we're moving away from a lexical SEO world, but I'm very much of the view that semantic SEO is still going to take, phraseology from Rufus and rely on that. And so, we even started to do this at my agency when we're copywriting. We're doing kind of the traditional keyword research to identify kind of the top, the semantic core for a listing, and we're building copy, but then we're kind of taking that copy and we're modifying it based on phraseology that we see come out of Rufus. Look, I don't know. I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but
you're prompting Rufus on the product listing, on the specific or on the category, and then you're taking what customers are asking.
It's both. So we'll kind of start on the category, zoom out, and then if there's 3 to 5 competitors that are doing quite well and we want to target, we'll zoom in on the product listing, and then we have a series of prompts that we just kind of push to Rufus and use it to harvest information on those competitors. And the theory again being that if we speak in Rufus's language on the listing, we're going to better tap into that Rufus SEO.
Last question for me, Joe, and then you can move on. Have you seen any early results from doing this? Yes, or is it just intuition that it's an important thing?
I think it's intuition at this phase. And candidly, Max, we haven't run truly controlled. Well, that's not true. We regularly split test title, bullets, images through manager experiments through the native functionality in Seller Central. And in most cases, our copy outperforms the previous copy, but it's hard for me to look at that and say that's exclusively because we optimized it around Rufus. We haven't run a true controlled experiment where we basically developed copy the old way and then developed it the new way, and then ran 2 split tests against the old version to see which one outperformed. So there's a lot of noise in the data, but again, I'm hard pressed to believe my intuition's wrong here, based on everything that I hear from Amazon, and just based on, again, you were on the inside like me, how they think in terms of developing things, and how it's predictive of what successful behaviors on the marketplace will be.
I'm curious to that. Like a lot of people in our industry in the beginning of the year were talking about using Amazon Comprehend to, in a way, sense check their listings. And I don't know if the jury is out still on this. Like, have you used Comprehend to as part of your optimization flow for Rufus?
Yeah, you know what? That's not part of our process, and I'll say that that's not a categorical denial of its usefulness or its effectiveness. It's just to say that I looked at it and I didn't want to focus energies testing it. What I have done, and I spoke about this at Danny McMillan's Seller Sessions event in May, we've really embraced recognition, which is another AWS AI service. Recognition, for those who don't know, it's recognition spelled with a K, and it is Amazon's basically their visual detection software. It has kind of some sub features that'll detect text in image. It has features that'll kind of recognize what the image is. But what I showed on stage at Seller Sessions, and what I've since written about, is your images. I always used to say bullets for bots, creatives for conversion. And I think that's still largely true. But your creative assets are going to play an increasing role in your SEO. And it's because of recognition being used in the background by Amazon to extract relevant keywords or phrases from your listings. And I've tested this at length. I've showed it on stage. You know, the way to really test this, because it's not easy, is you almost need to have a listing. You go find one or either create one where you have a very technical term only in your image stack, only in your gallery. And, you know, you put traffic around, or you apply ads and run traffic around it. But what you find is you start to index and rank for it. And that's only because that word appears in the images and Amazon recognition has extracted it. You know, I showed an example on stage at Seller Sessions. You know, this is part of our optimization process for clients. I just, again, recorded another presentation, and this was one of the hacks that I shared and gave another example. But I think if you're going back to your question, Joe, around like what has changed on Amazon, one of the other things that has changed is Amazon sellers need to become, you know, true marketers, not just performance advertisers, but they need to be skilled in direct response marketing. They need to be skilled in the areas of writing compelling copy that hooks readers, that agitates a problem, that offers solutions. You can do that in your image stack. It doesn't just have to be in ad creatives. But in addition to doing that in your image stack, you need to remember that your image stack is valuable for SEO. And words that you can't fit on your listing or don't want to fit on your listing, you can still get kind of SEO juice from them because of recognition.
Got it. Now, actually, just one follow-up question. Sorry, Max, but recognition is also, like, at least from what my research is that it also looks at video. Do you think that Amazon's AI is already indexing the videos on our like listings and including that as part of the, I guess, ranking decision-making process?
That's an awesome question. And of course, none of us know for sure, but my hypothesis would be yes. And here's why.
Yeah.
We have an in-house tool that our creative and branding team uses. It's a predictive AI tool. So part of our creative asset optimization process involves, you know, generating multiple iterations of a creative, scoring them through this predictive AI tool, shipping them to a market research or shopper polling tool like PickFu or IntelliV, taking that feedback and running it through predictive AI and then shipping it, right? I'm sharing that because this predictive AI tool, it not only scores statics, but it scores videos. And, you know, when I first had this tool demoed to me, they showed it scoring a TikTok video. And then I looked at the views and the engagement on that TikTok video, and there was just a crazy correlation. And so if there's a third-party tool that can do that, I'm hard-pressed to believe that Amazon cannot, though I don't know for sure. It's not something that I've tested, but it would be super interesting if, you know, you commission a creator to do an unboxing video, and as they're unboxing, they're kind of reading out, reciting key features and benefits, all of which aren't on the detail page, but then all of a sudden you index and rank for those features and benefits. It's testable, right? It's not something that we've done yet.
Very interesting. Yeah, I have the niggling suspicion that it is, but I'm sure we'll find out soon.
Yeah.
So Amazon announced a ton of tools at Accelerate and Unboxed. What do you think the ones that are going to be really impactful and ones which you think are not going to be?
Yeah. This is good. It's, you know, it's voting season, so let's vote on some of these Amazon tools. And like I said, as a general matter, I'm happy that Amazon is releasing tools, that they're investing in the Seller Central experience. You know, it's great to have free tools that are effective or have high quality data. But let's start with maybe Amelia. the AI, the native AI assistant in Seller Central, which none of us have had the opportunity to test. I don't think Amazon has released it, or if so, it's just in beta, probably for US participants. I'm not one of them, so this is speculative. But for the audience, if you haven't heard of Amelia, Project Amelia, it is an in-app, in Seller Central AI assistant that has access to your data, has access to your listings, and can provide to Amazon's selling point strategic advice. Or it can do basic tasks that a VA might do, like compile my business reports and show me the year-over-year trend on this product, or compile my advertising results and combine it with search query performance data and show me where I'm getting purchases at a differentially high rate, but my impressions aren't there, and then give me some recommendations on my ads to increase impressions. Right? In theory, that's what it could do. But Max, to kind of your core question, impactful or not impactful, buy or sell. I think Amelia will be impactful for the novice or intermediate sellers, because it's going to close an information gap. It will close it quickly. It'll give them ready answers for basic questions. I think for intermediate, sophisticated sellers, Amelia will be of very limited use, because Amelia, like any AI, it's math, right? And you guys are more experts in this, and more experts than I am, so correct me. But I think of AI as really just large models that draw inferences based on patterns that exist in the historical data. And if Amelia is only giving advice, only giving strategy advice based on its data set, that will grow, but it's still backward looking. As an advanced, a top 1% seller, I'm not sure how you leverage Amelia to push strategy forward, to do something that's truly unique and novel in the Amazon space, whether it's with your listings or with your ads. So I think whether it's a buy or sell for me just depends on the user class. But I'm curious to hear your opinions.
So
yeah, go on, Max.
I'm very bullish on the AI agent space. I think that we've kind of lived in the era of generative AI for the last kind of 2 years of ChatGPT and Journey and other kind of like, things that generate content, Luma, Runway to a lesser extent on the video side. I think the next step of agentic AI, which can basically complete autonomous tasks for you, we're now at the cusp of that. So ChatGPT 01 was the first model there. Claude have an agentic model as well. And I'm very bullish on it. I think it's going to be a lot better and more accurate than what we've seen with the creative stuff. Because even if something is just slightly off with like a hand or whatever with a kind of Gen AI in a video, it won't be usable. Whereas I think an agent completing basic tasks, you say, "Hey Amelia, can you like run this analysis on my stock inventory or whatever?" It's going to be able to do that to a PhD level, probably better than any better than 99% of humans. It's going to be able to identify changes in Amazon's algorithm, which humans won't be able to. So I'm super bullish on this stuff. Like I kind of agree that in the first year or two, it will probably not be helpful, and we'll start to see the whole like Amelia's telling us to eat rocks like Gemini did, and like all this kind of like random edge cases coming out, settle your prices at 1p and your sales, like who knows, right? But I think eventually I'm bullish on the agentic side of stuff. Joe?
I am bullish on the agentic side of stuff if it doesn't come to Amazon. But I am quite skeptical that Amazon is going to be able to pull anything particularly good unless they use Claude's AI, right? A large language model. So given, I think
they're the biggest investor in Anthropic.
Yeah, I know, but that doesn't mean that they will underpin it, right? So I've been tracking kind of like how the Amazon's large language models are doing in terms of performance, and just speaking with also internally with my own Amazon contacts. So far, I don't get the idea that Amazon's AI is anything to shout about. So if it's sort of their own proprietary model, I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's gonna just tell you some fairly basic, obvious stuff, which might be, as John said, useful for beginner intermediate sellers, but not necessarily anything interesting. And I also I think it would be incredibly naive for sellers to let anything Amazon do anything agentic on their accounts, because historical data says don't do it. It's gonna do a boo-boo. And so if Amazon does the good thing of actually underpinning whatever agent or any action with Claude, that is a different story. And that will be interesting and that could be good. But for the time being, I don't think this for me is anything particularly interesting until like the actual large language model gets better.
You raise a really interesting point there, which I want to put to John, about like Amazon internal culture, because as you say, like basically, if you're in a startup like I am, or maybe you're working at OpenAI or like one of these Claude or one of these incredible scale up, there's an incredible amount of excitement and energy and perplexity. People like this just really charging for the moon. But I mean, what you were very senior at you're senior at Amazon for a number of years. What are you sensing? Because I'm like Joe, like my friends who still work at Amazon. I met one of them in Accelerator. I went for a coffee with her, and she was like, "Yeah, like we're going back. They're forcing everyone back to the office 5 days a week, which is basically really upsetting. If you can imagine the morale there. Like Jeff has gone. It's quite a dictatorial type culture nowadays. Like strive to be the world's best employer, which is one of the new leadership principles. People clearly are saying, right, well, you're lying. That one clearly you don't care about because of pay and working habits, and therefore, like, can I believe anything you guys are saying to me as leadership? And also this return to office, as she said to me, basically means that Amazon operates with multiple teams across the world. People used to kind of happy to take like an 8 a.m. call, a 6 p.m. call to accommodate different time zones. Like a lot of AWS is based out in Australia, right? So if you're working from New York or Australia, someone's got to give early morning, late evening. And now with this 5 days in the office, I'm like, no, I'm a 9 to 5. If it's not at my 9 to 5, we're not having the call because, I'm traveling in and out. So, John, like, what are your contacts saying, and how do you think that's going to impact them building anything which is actually kind of like revolutionary in this space?
Yeah, man, that's a meaty topic. So I think Amazon held its quarterly all hands either yesterday or maybe on Monday, and there was some reporting on it through a number of sources. Business Insider was the one that kind of first caught my attention. And Jassy got on stage, I think either was speaking extemporaneously or maybe fielding a question. It doesn't matter. But he said something which is germane to this. And he said that, number one, return to office is not meant to be a back end path to layoffs, which has been the accusation. And that's kind of ancillary.
Which I think it is. But anyway.
Yeah. But anyway, right. But he also commented on the previous statements he made about removing management, about how Amazon's kind of manager to individual contributor ratio is lopsided, and they want to kind of remove managers and move people to more individual contributors. And part of the reason for doing that is because he wants to preserve a culture of builders, a culture of doers, and not let Amazon go down the path of bureaucracy. He wants to kind of preserve the startup within a large company culture that I think you and I know from when we worked there, but is maybe tenuous these days. And I thought that was interesting because at some level, it almost feels like forcing people back into the office is the ultimate bureaucratic move, right? Defining how people work, where they work, and when they work. But nevertheless, in his mind, it's about creating opportunities for in-person collaboration, idea cross-pollination, the kind of things that produce, step change innovations. But having said that, and to your question on is Amazon capable of innovating and doing the same kind of things that are being done at Anthropic and elsewhere, the one thing it has going for it, which is both, a strength and then a weakness, is it's very siloed. You have teams sometimes knowingly working on the same thing in competing ways. Other times you have teams working on the same things, but without knowing. And, it produces this sort of scattershot of tools, in both internal and external. And it also doesn't always lead to tools that perform best in the marketplace, because you have people, you have silos working on sprints. They complete their sprint, which in this case I'm defining not in the software sense, but more like, as well as I do, people are at Amazon tend to be in their roles for 12, 18 months at most. They work hard against S-team goals. They work hard to complete their CLT goals. And when they do that, that looks good for their career, and they use that as a stepping stone to the next thing. So that's a long-winded way of saying I think Amazon might be capable of these innovations. What I worry about is the ability to continue to iterate and improve them in such a way that you can keep up with the likes of Anthropic that are solely focused on this, and they have kind of a long orientation toward them.
Is it day 2, John? Is it officially day 2? Are we looking at Amazon in the same way Steve Jobs leaves Apple, and they got Tim Cook, who is a great CEO in terms of organization and profitability and growing their market share, but fundamentally Apple hasn't launched a new iPhone or a new product since Steve Jobs, right? They haven't, they had the Vision Pro, which they've now kind of pulled back in terms of manufacturing. They canned the Apple car because for whatever reason they felt it was too ambitious. They just haven't had a new breakthrough product. And is Amazon, is it just like the nature of companies, the kind of visionary leaves and you just have day 2 arrive with Andy Jassy?
Yeah. It's funny. I put this out as a LinkedIn poll several weeks back. I asked if it's day 1, day 1.5, or day 2. And my personal vote was for day 1.5 because, I'm an it depends kind of guy. But, it's very clear that Jassy has a different leadership mentality than Bezos. And in a similar way as Tim Cook and Steve Jobs. Jobs and Bezos, I think, were about what I'll call discrete innovation, step change innovation, going from 0 to 1 in a lot of areas. Jassy, Tim Cook, I think that their mentality is more around continuous innovation and just gradually moving up the curve, and along the way making that curve more profitable. And Amazon just released their Q3 earnings last week. We saw the improvement in cash flow, the improvement in operating margins across every business. AWS is now a $100 billion run rate business. It's very clear that they're almost operating Amazon as a financial company, allocating capital where they see the highest growth and not necessarily stepping back and thinking, well, where can we make some big, bold bets? So, which might be a signal of day 2 culture, right? One of the LPs is think big and invent and simplify. And I think, those LPs might not be as prominent in people's heads, or at least in the S-team's heads, as they were in the good old days.
Yeah, I'll add one more comment, then Joe, you can go to the next one. I think the difference between Apple and Amazon is that Apple employs 160,000 people. So for them to go to day 2, they're in a very comfortable position where they have, a small amount of people, with large amounts of autonomy and instant projects. And, I think of like NVIDIA, where like the average employee is got like 4 million in revenue or something crazy like that. Amazon is like a totally different way. This is like 2 million people, massive bureaucracy. So kind of when you have all those people and you're not like charging forward in like all crazy directions like when we were there, then it's kind of like what's going on. You're kind of in this kind of static position and just trying to optimize the profitability of too many people that bring them all into the office. So yeah, it's quite like can do the next.
Well, I agree with all of that, and think from the perspective of a potential employee, of someone who's a builder at heart.
Yeah.
Do you go to Amazon to build things, knowing what you know, or do you go to an NVIDIA, or can you be a product manager if you're not technical at one of the leading standalone AI companies? I mean, I think a lot of people might bias in favor of the latter than going at Amazon to build, because especially I think in the retail businesses, the consumer businesses, you become more of a financial engineer than a builder. You're minding your P&L, you're watching costs, you're tinkering with the fee stack.
You're managing the pyramid because there's a pyramid structure, right? And you're managing the fact that your direct reports can't be promoted because there's no space. That it's just a pyramid, and their data reports, they probably can be promoted. I guess in my case, they're more junior. It doesn't really matter how many people go there, but they're not going to have the scope of what they may want when they get to it. So it's a
Yeah, and I think this is actually a really interesting point, because at the end of the day, like I at least from my point of view, the future winners in the space will be really the companies who have the latest AI and like proprietary AI, and that is in a large extent not just through dependent on investment, but also dependent on the talent, and the talent wants to go to obviously OpenAI, Anthropic, DeepMind, Microsoft, and
I think probably with Google, right? Like Google probably have this issue where like, what has Google launched in the last 10 years, which has been revolutionary?
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, like if you look at it historically, like Google's DeepMind is like
they acquired them though, right? They didn't launch that.
Yeah. Okay, but it still counts as Google. But yeah, the point is that Amazon is on the back of that queue, and it's not, as Jon said, it's not really seen maybe as the innovator where like all of this talent would want to pivot to. Anyway, we have a very few like minutes left, and I actually want to like continue on that question about AI, like Amazon's AI launches, because I think there is a few things that might be interested, and I'm really what I really want to ask Jon is, which are the winners for you, Jon? Because okay, we're not that interested in the ones that are gimmicky. What do you think is actually good?
Yeah. Well, let me start with gimmicky, at least at this stage. And Max, you'll probably agree with me, but AI Creative Studio. Amazon, proudly rolled that out at Accelerate. They also rolled out video generator for ads, and they showed some of the outputs, and I was unimpressed. I look at a lot of generative AI image or video tools, and it still feels kind of JV, junior varsity. I think you still need top end designers to take it from kind of that middle tier to elite level. And I look at it from the perspective of an Amazon practitioner or a brand builder, but I also always try to wear my customer hat. And I remember sitting in the big event hall at Accelerate as they threw up on the screen the videos that they had generated for video generator, and I'm looking at my partner, and I'm thinking, this is it. Like, I mean, it's cool. It's gimmicky, but I would never use this as a brand owner. Like, it's so clearly artificial, and I think that's what people maybe lose as they think about some of these cool AI Creative Studio video generator. Yes, you can make things in a flash, but I think they lose sight of the fact that you sort of dehumanize your brand if that's what you're going to, the direction that you're going to go in, and use some of these generative AI tools that are maybe underdeveloped. So Amazon's generative AI still feels a little gimmicky to me, and I'm hopeful that by virtue of their training set, it can improve. But like Max, that you're the subject matter expert here.
Yeah.
It's not just the training set; it's the tagging, it's the categorization, it's all the stuff that needs to be regularly maintained, continuously maintained. And I don't know if Amazon, going back to what we were saying before about how they've evolved as a company, are they going to have dedicated people like continuously classifying, tagging the AI Creative Studio data set? I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, I have conflicting thoughts in my head here. I mean, the first one, I agree. Like, I was really surprised by the demo images and videos they chose to put in their presentation, because they could put in any of them. And the fact that they put in like quite obviously bad ones was just kind of showed to me that the product managers actually just don't understand the sellers at all, right? Because surely if anyone in the room had talked to a seller and said, "Hey, would you use this? What do you think?" They would have gone, "No, I can't use that." I've sat through that pain.
The steaming cup didn't sell you that product. Are you joking? Like a little bit of steam.
So it's it kind of shows like the divorce levels you have from like whoever is coding this stuff sitting somewhere in their basement and like the practical use. On the flip side, when I was at Accelerate, I had coffee with two CEOs who I'd say were 5 years ahead of me in terms of their journey, like far more established SaaS players, right? Actually, both of them were had stalls there. So, they paid $100K to have the stall. So these are like, some of the big players. I won't say who. And I said to them both, like, are you guys not worried about Amazon? Like, how can you not be sitting? Like, coming here, I'm nervous about what Amazon will launch. And they were like, "Oh, no, da, da, da." And I was like, how can people not be? How can it not? Like, Amazon is a giant and it can squash you at any point. Like, how are people not more concerned? But then, kind of my thinking changed, like, kind of evolved as I was reflecting on it, which is like Amazon are never going to build tools which are going to help you to rank above another seller, right? So they'll give you the basics. For a reference, like a famous quote from one of my early customers who runs a aggregator in the UK said, like, Amazon tools are like the NHS, National Health Service. You'll use it if you absolutely have to, but you want to go private if you can. And that's kind of my mental model, which is we're going to build stuff which is going to help sellers rank on top of one another. We talked about Rufus and Cosmo and implementing all this stuff, which it's just never going to come into Creative Studio. But I agree, like, that there's part of me which is like, I'm not relaxed about this. I was surprised to hear at least what they were saying to me on the surface level. Maybe they were just saying that, but like these other kind of CEOs in completely different areas were kind of a lot more calm about Amazon launching stuff, which is just definitely going to cannibalize some of their business. Like, there's no 2-3 ways about it, right? Like, there'll be some cannibalization.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Scott Needham, just awesome guy, founder of Smart Scout. He posted something very intriguing on LinkedIn yesterday. It ended Jungle Scout and Helium 10, kind of the OGs in the software space, the Amazon software space. He showed the decline over time, and there was a lot of debate and conjecture around what was driving that. And I think what I introduced to the discussion was, Amazon's making it harder for certain business models like online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale to exist, and that's a segment of the demand. But I think I maybe commented to someone else that the other factor that might be at play here is Amazon's introducing a lot of tools, and while they might be NHS in quality, it's nevertheless enough to make kind of the median seller that's just starting out say, well, I'm going to use this free tool instead of pay $100 a month.
I mean, and the other one is there's there's a million SaaS companies coming in now, and he obviously is a CEO of one of them, right? So I was like, the cojones on him to put his biggest competitors and just like show their steady decline and be like, this isn't a comment because I compete with them, but I'm a subscriber to Smart Scout. in many ways like they have different features which are cool, but like in many ways he's overlapping with Helium 10 and Jungle Scout. They have like keywords and listing builder. They have a lot of similar stuff. So I thought that was pretty funny that he did that. To be honest. Like, I wish they all do that. I'll just put everybody like, look how shit these guys are.
I mean, it's a very Amazon thing to do, right? To choose your statistics carefully to support a narrative. So yeah, you know, you and I have probably been well trained in that regard.
Yeah.
I know we are probably running on time, but Joe, I didn't answer your question. You asked me, you know, what I'm excited about, and I started with the gimmicky stuff. I think in the world of Amazon AI, I'm probably most excited and or bullish about what they're doing on the advertising side, not on generative AI for creative assets, but more around, you know, how it feels like they're moving in the direction of meta advertising, where, you know, the picture of success is not your abilities as a media buyer, but it's more about the assets that you put in front of customers. You know, you think about like in the meta world, Performance Max advertising, right? Or other ways that you kind of take one hand off the wheel and you let the AI sort of put your ads in front of the right audiences, not in front of the right keywords or the right products, but the right audiences.
I have a very interesting question. I know that we're running out of time, but I just want to ask you because it's connected to what you're saying right now. How do you see the future of agencies in the space with AI coming and taking more of the pie?
You know what? I love that question. Someone on my team, I was having dinner with her at AMZ Innovate, and she asked the same thing. And of course, you know, I have a horse in this race as an agency owner, but with all questions related to trends, potentially disruptive trends, I try to be a student of history. I try to take a long-term view of things. And if I zoom out, one of the durable truths of the human experience is that, you know, we outsource work. We outsource things that are either not, you know, the highest and best use of our time, or just frankly rocks in our shoe. And so in one regard, I think that agencies are not going away, because there will always be Fortune 1000 brands who, you know, they have a national sales manager that is overseeing 5 channels. Amazon is one of them. And even with all the AI tools brought into the fold, it's just one person. And he or she has 4 other channels to worry about. He or she can't be a subject matter expert. So I think there's always going to be a place for agencies. But what I think this world that we're moving into is going to force is agencies to be more efficient, to be more adaptive and adoptive of cutting edge tools that reduce the amount of work input to produce the amount of work output. And, you know, this is my last, paid shout out to eComtent, but like that, it's a great example, right? You know, I want my designers to, you know, continue to be able to do their design work, but produce 30 times the output that they can today. And I think that's what agencies are going to need to be able to do. And I think a designer can do that if, you know, they get a large output of creatives from eComtent, and then they're just doing final tweaks, you know, that last 5 or 10%. So that's sort of been the focus for us as an agency. It's how can we continue to innovate? How can we do more with less?
Can I ask one last question? Do you have one more minute?
Yeah.
So one of your many hats, John, I know you wear, is in kind of the exit and selling businesses. Can you just, you know, and I know like one of the big themes I really enjoy in your newsletters are kind of the aggregator analysis and like all this kind of stuff. So how are you seeing the market for, you know, business owners listening to this wanting to sell their business?
You know what? This came up at AMZ Innovate last week during the VIP session, and I gave a couple data points, which I'll share here. Data point number 1 is, if you're thinking about exiting, as always, you know, begin with the end in mind. You know, that's the old Stephen Covey phrase. You should be planning at least 12 months in advance. But you should also be mentally preparing yourself for the fact that once you go to market, your business is going to be on the market for longer than you maybe expect or hope. And the stat that I gave, this is a little dated, but in this climate, 77% of businesses, e-commerce businesses on the market, are on the market for 6 months or more before they get an offer. And that says nothing about whether the offer actually leads to a closed transaction. But over 3/4 are on the market for a long time. So it is not an environment right now where you build the best e-commerce business, whether it's a SaaS business or a product business, you go to market and you get 3 offers in the first week. That's just not the world we're in anymore. So I think owners that are thinking about exiting need to build that time in, and also need to prepare themselves emotionally for the fact that their business might be sitting on the market for a while, and they need to keep running it in the process.
Yeah.
The other data point I gave, and this is because people are always asking about multiples. What's the multiple environment for e-commerce product businesses?
Yeah.
And I'd say that from the aggregator heyday, it came down by about a turn, which it came down by about 1x. So if in the aggregator heyday the range was kind of 3.5x to 4.5x, and it came down to 2.5 to 3.5. I mean, there are some good businesses out there priced at 2x. And what I advise clients when I'm doing sell side work is to remember that if they're going to hold firm on a price, they need to be flexible on terms. Or conversely, if they're open on price, but they have a hard number of upfront cash that they need, that's a term, then that's the trade-off. It's your price, my terms, my price, your terms. And buyers, it's definitely a buyer market, so they're happy to walk away if they can't at least get the terms that they want, if they're not getting the price that they want. So yeah, it's to the brand owners, to the SaaS owners, I would say put your head down and build for another 12, 18 months. And everything's cyclical, right? I think the market will turn. I don't think it's going to turn in a way where you have 16 billion in venture capital coming in to scoop up assets, but buyers will become more active, especially for the good businesses. As interest rates come down, as inflation starts to dissipate, I think we'll see the tide shift, but I don't see that happening for another 12 months at least.
Awesome. Well, I think we have run out of time, unfortunately, though I think we can continue talking for at least another hour. Jon, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do so?
Yeah, so very active on LinkedIn, search Jon Derkits. On Twitter, my handle is Guy Fossil, which some people have asked this. It was just the first word that I don't know if I said it or I wrote it. I spelled it out with stickers on like a toy. And so it just became my Twitter handle in 2009 or whatever. And then Jon, Jon, at Color More Lines is the best email to reach me at.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being our guest. It was a really interesting conversation.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.